All right, everybody, here we are live on our Facebook page, Pete Winarski page, live in the More Revenue, More Profit group, live on our YouTube channel. And of course, we're going to grab this content and we're going to repurpose it onto our podcast, Business Results Radio. We are going to repurpose it on LinkedIn, maybe on Instagram. How cool is that? It's going to go everywhere. So thank you for joining today. I'm excited to be here. My name is Pete Winarski, and we are talking today about your culture, and not just if you're a big company where obviously, a lot of times culture gets the bad rap. It gets the blame for things that aren't going well. But for you as a small business owner as well, it's a big deal. Now, before we get into that, I want to share with you this ebook. I'm just holding it up here for you. Let's see if you can see it. How to get customers faster in this uncertain time. Let me move my fingers so you can see that a little bit better. How to get customers faster in this uncertain time. I want to tell you about it real quick because it's a really important conversation for right now, what's going on in the world. Obviously, the economy is upside down. The pandemic's still a thing. Your customers' buying behaviors are different than what they used to be, and you've got to find a way to adjust. This tells you what to do. So I want you to have that. The way to get it, be part of the More Revenue, More Profit private Facebook group. So you have to go there and request to join. We'll let you in, and then you have to go through the survey. And when you take the survey, there's instructions for how to get that ebook, and you will get it, and it will be magical. And as a result, your business will take off. That's what we want for you. So let's talk about culture. And the idea today, in fact, describing how we described it here, why your culture matters, why it matters, especially in your small business. We'll talk about why it matters in your big company too. But let's not limit ourselves just to the big companies, because you small business leaders out there are always left out, right? There's a lot of conversations that take place and it happen when we talk about the exciting things that are going on in the world of business improvement. And of course, for small companies, sometimes like, hey man, these big giant company concepts don't apply to me. Culture, that doesn't apply to me. Well, I got news for you. Yes, it does. It does in a big way. And, especially, as you start to grow your team, how the dynamics of adding team members into your mix, that will move your culture and it will move it in a big way. So in fact, think of it this way. Let's say that you are a big company and you have 1,000 employees and you add one. You now have 1,001 employees. You didn't really change your culture that much. But let's say you're a small company and you have 10 employees and you add one. Well, you just increased your employee base by 10%. Let's say you have 5 employees or 2 employees, or maybe you are the one solopreneur owner and you add your first team member. The dynamics are huge. The shift is enormous. So let's not pretend that culture in a small company doesn't matter, because it actually matters, maybe at an order of magnitude even larger than it would for a big company. Now, what's interesting is I just got an email from Inc. magazine. And of course, Inc. does these surveys throughout the year, and they do these awards. And an award that they're recruiting, getting applications for right now, is Best Place to Work. And how cool is that? Because this is a reflection of your culture. You won't win that award if you apply for it with a stinky culture, right? If you have a junky, crappy culture where people don't get along and there's the blame game, just think of, like, list out in your mind all of the things that are broken in a company. Maybe it's not your company, and I hope it's not, but think of this way. Here's the perspective. I'll just shift and give you permission to go to a negative, dark place for a moment here. Let's pretend that you know of a company where things are not working well, where things are broken, processes are broken, customers are upset, how people play together isn't very nice, right? The sandbox, right? People are duking it out or blaming, or there's backstabbing going on. These are the things that reflect an extreme case of a poor culture. And the reality is, it's all over the place. Now, it's probably not that bad for you. Probably not. But what I want to describe is that there are elements of less than great that sneak in all over the place. So, big company, small company, I'm talking to everybody right now. So, the idea of a culture that is not producing the highest level of cooperation, the highest level of engagement, the highest level of customer service, anything below the highest level is a problem. And so that's where I want to help you to focus, to identify, to recognize, and then to shift, ultimately to shift into the thing that you want, the experience that you want. That's what we're after. Many times, your culture's broken and you don't know it. Why? Because you can't really see it. You don't see, there's not this like, it's like it's the force, right? May the force be with you. You can't really see it. You can't really see the energy floating through the ether and impacting the way you decide what to do and the way you act and behave, et cetera. It's not visible. Let me define what culture is and why that's the case. Because the culture is not visible, but the evidence of the culture is visible. And here's what I mean by that. The definition that we use at Win Enterprises is that the culture is the sum, the collective of every employee's beliefs, thoughts, and then their behaviors. Their behaviors meaning their actions, their conversations, things they do, things they say. You can't see beliefs. You can't see thoughts, but you can see the output of beliefs and thoughts, which turn into behaviors and actions, right? Things you do, things you say. So your culture is invisible because it's the collective of all of that. But the hints and the clues are how people behave, what people are doing, what they're saying. So if you are ever in a conversation with someone and someone's frustrated and say, we just can't get stuff done around here. Well, there's never enough time. Or people don't respect each other in this company. They're blaming the culture. They're using various words to describe their frustrations and what's broken and what's not going great. That's the culture. By the way, it could be what's going amazing, right? That's another factor. What's going amazing in your company? I love working here. We love, man, the level of engagement is amazing. The level of trust. I love that there's open conversation and, I offer a suggestion and I don't get fired the next day, right? The opposite is unfortunately sometimes true. I challenged the boss and the boss didn't get mad. Those types of things they're very real. Those are very real scenarios. So with that in mind, so now you've got the sense of your culture and what it is, that's definition. It's the collective, the aggregate, the sum of all employees. And obviously there's a little bit of a weighting that goes on over time. At this snapshot in time, the culture is the sum of everything. But what happens over time? Obviously, you think back to the founder. Someone created the company in the first place. And naturally, on that day, the culture represents the founder and that person, he or she, his or her core values. What do they care about? How do they act? How do they behave on a day-to-day basis? Once upon a time, that's what your company's culture was. Now, for you small business owners, that's you, right? That's you right now. So if you're a solopreneur, you are the culture. You are the company culture. That's it. There ain't no other bodies, right? It's you. Now, if you are a small business with a handful of employees, you still have this center of gravity pulling closest to you and your values. However, you're not alone. And so there are other people who have started to impact how things get done, right? So aggregate that over time. And now you've got a big 100 employees, 1,000 employees, whatever the case may be. And you've got a situation where now you've got this enormous number of people, the way that they behave with each other. That's what your culture is today. it evolved over time. And the question is, did it evolve into something that you're happy about, or did it evolve into something that it's a disappointment? It's not working. It's broken. It's not the experience that your employees are happy to have. You're not getting the company results that you want. And the experience is just something you're not happy about, embarrassed about. And by the way, when that happens, people will leave you. Sometimes people leave and you're like, oh, thank goodness they're gone. Other times people leave and are like, oh man, we're going to miss that person's contributions. They're smart. They got so much done, et cetera, et cetera. So get your culture right. And now that's a protection layer so that doesn't happen for you. So, think about you as the owner and how, as you add an employee, what happens is now you've got a second person and the culture starts to drift. The center of gravity, you've got this, well, let's pretend we're planets here. You've got, the owner's like Jupiter. It's a bigger mass, so there's more gravity towards the owner. And maybe the employees are like, Jupiter's moons. I don't know where I'm going with this really, but they're smaller. But as there's many, many, many more people who join, they start to bring in their own style, their own beliefs and thoughts and actions. And so if they grew up, so to speak, in a different way of experiencing cooperation, communication, collaboration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then your culture will start to drift. So if you have someone who comes in who is the bull in the china shop, they get results, but they knock everyone over in the process and make a mess of things, and that's not addressed, then that will start to move your culture in a direction where it's results at any cost and it's okay. I'm not saying that's good or bad. That's just it's just what will happen if that's the case. And then let's say another person comes in and there's even more of that. And then there's perhaps a supervisor or a manager who has that. Let's say it's 10 managers in the company and one of them is like that, but they're hiring like crazy and they keep hiring more and more people like that. And it starts to skew, right? The gravitational pull starts to wobble. Jupiter wobbles. There's so many moons now. Jupiter's wobbling. Maybe it moves off of orbit a little bit. I'm not pretending to be an astronomer here. I'm just giving you a metaphor. So don't, if you are a physicist and an astrophysicist and you want to ping me, send me a DM later and say, that's not how it works. What I do know is like there's mass and there's gravitational pull. And in this metaphor, the culture is getting pulled and it's getting pulled in a direction that you don't necessarily want it to go. So the question is, what's the experience you do want? Now, understand how your culture got created in the first place, but what is it you want? Do you like what you have or do you not like what you have? So here's where we are today. Let's understand that and appreciate it. Maybe we look in the rearview mirror from a history standpoint and figure out, okay, now I understand how it got created. I understand where we are and I don't like it. Or here are the pieces that I like. Here are the pieces I don't like. So you evaluate and say, I don't like these attributes, but I do like these attributes. So when that's the case, now you get the choice, the opportunity to say, why don't we do something about these character traits, these attributes of our culture that we don't like? Let's fix them. Let's fix them. Let's go through an exercise now and a process to move the culture towards what it is that we want. Now you're talking my language because now you're taking ownership and accountability and responsibility. It's not the blame game. It's like, oh, let's rank on this culture because nope, we can't get anything done in this culture. This company stinks or whatever, right? Those are blaming woe is me type comments that employees do sometimes make and leaders sometimes make and the owners and the executive team sometimes make. So I'm inviting you to recognize that that sometimes happens. Turn that off. You guys have heard me go through conversations in the past about complaints on some of my past Facebook lives and podcast episodes. Remember, there's almost no value to a complaint other than recognizing that something's broken. But complaining doesn't fix it. In fact, all complaining does, it adds negative energy into the mix. Do you want that in your culture? Do you want a complaining culture, right? So the idea of whatever it is that you don't like, here's your opportunity to stand in your power, address it as a team and say, let's change it. Let's fix it. What do we want it to be? How do we now, and now you define how you want those new attributes to be. What do you want the support structure behind it to look like? What are the beliefs that you put in place? The thought processes that would align with those positively framed beliefs? What are the systems and structures to make it easy to follow through with those attributes? What are the desired behaviors, the actions, the conversations, right? Because it's things people do and things people say. And define all of that as a team, right? You can lead the charge if you're the boss or the leader or the owner, but why not get people engaged? Because I would suggest that engagement is one of those attributes that will improve your company's culture. It will improve the experience for the team members that you have. So you put all of that together and you open up some conversation, you create some dialogue, and you agree to where you want to go. And then you create, there's some other norms and rules of engagement that you might put in place. Like what happens if one of us steps out of bounds? Because of course we've got, let's say you're 40 years old, you've got 40 years on the planet of experience and habit formed behaviors. And now you want something new. Well, what are the rules of engagement? Are you going to whack someone across the head with a 2x4? No, probably not. But you might gently remind them and say, okay, playfully, let's not do that. Like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. I just got really frustrated. No problem, right? It's a relationship building exercise and you're improving the team together. Now I want to give you a scale of size where this works. This exercise, certainly if you're a small company, you could see where the team might be the whole company. In a big company, your team might be you and the, let's say, 6 people who are your direct reports. That's your team. And maybe they have direct reports or not. Maybe there are lots of other functional departments and there's other managers or directors or vice presidents or executive team leaders or whatever you call yourselves. You have a sphere of influence and a span of control. If you think of traditional management language, span of control, I'm the boss. I've got a team of 6. I've got a span of control of those 6 people. They have teams. So I've got those people under them. And so that's sort of my pyramid structure. If you think like an org structure, like a pyramid. So therefore, in a traditional org structure, it's the branch, my branch, or my branches. Where do they go and how deep do they go? I can impact that. That's where I want to impact. I want to start with the 6 people who work for me. I want to work with them. I want to create the culture of how we do what we do. Naturally, that happens within the context of a bigger culture. So it's like little C culture, then big C culture for the company. What if you have divisions? What if you have multiple locations? So your team in the location's part of a bigger company. One of our clients where we did some culture work, they are international. So we did our culture work with the North American team. Well, of course, there's an international component to it now, right? So there's cross-pollination of cultures. And sometimes there's culture clashes where 2 different teams behave differently. And then it's, well, what's the best way to behave? How should we behave? Where there's conflict, what are the rules of engagement around conflict resolution? What are the challenging situations to resolve? What are the difficult conversations? There's some buzzwords for you. My apologies for buzzwords, but let's handle the critical conversations, the difficult conversations, the conflicts. Let's work it out in a way that's professional, that's relationship based. People matter. Let's make sure we are consciously rewarding not just the results for the company in terms of operational performance or financial performance, but also the human resource performance, the human element. People matter. So people are relationships. How do you make sure that the relationships come into play? So all of that matters. So we're talking a little bit today about, this matters, especially if you're a small business. It's not like, well, no, culture doesn't matter for small business. I'm going to blow off this discussion. No, it matters even more so because especially as you're growing, because as you're growing, your culture can drift more quickly. So what we suggest is build in this agenda, this conversation on a regular basis. Certainly as you do, there's all these annual and quarterly processes in business, somewhat artificial, but it comes from, we've got 4 seasons, in nature: spring, summer, fall, and winter. There's 4 quarters in a company's year, annual quarters. Wall Street thinks this way. Public companies look for quarterly reports, annual reports, the quarterly earnings call. So there's a little bit of artificial nature to quarterly. Why does quarterly matter? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. But the idea of 90 days, one of the books that I've written and is actually pretty impactful is about 90-day chunks. Act now, a daily action log for achieving your goals in 90 days. 90 days is a long enough period that you can actually get something done. It's also short enough where you can maintain your focus. So quarterly, as part of our quarterly check, let's ask, how is the culture doing? Are we at risk anywhere? Are we drifting anywhere? What actions can we do to bring things back in line with what we want to have? And obviously, anytime you have new people join, so let's say you're a small company, you add a person, you add another person, you add another person. What are the dynamics? What are the team dynamics at play? Norms, rules of engagement. Obviously, these are going to evolve because humans, they just do that, right? When you have conversation and you play the game of life, you end up figuring things out. Human beings are agile. They're smart. You are smart. You can figure this out. And you may look in the rearview mirror and notice, when did we drift? Think of any relationship. When did things drift away from what it was before? Some of you married people are going, hey, wait a minute. What's he talking about here? Play with me for a second. Just recognize human behavior. People are people. Things change over time. If you notice they're changing away from what you want, then change them back. That's the point. Now, I want to tell you about a culture guide that we've written. And it's actually called The Ultimate Guide to Shifting Your Culture. And the culture guide is a really well-written, if I don't mind saying so myself, well-written guide for instructional on what to do, how to do it. If you're interested in seeing this, just DM me, direct message me, Facebook, Instagram, whichever, LinkedIn, whichever social media platform you're in, hearing this, message me directly and say, hey, I'm interested in seeing the culture guide. Just send me a note. We'll get it to you. Because we want you to succeed in a big way as you move your company results. Sometimes the more aggressive you go towards your results, you stress and strain how things get done, which is another way to think of your culture. What is your culture? It's how we do things here. It's how things get done here. It's how people interact here. So I don't want you to struggle. I want you to figure this out, and we've got some answers for you. So thank you for being here today. Message me directly if you want to read the culture guide. It's very slickly produced by Yomza, our team member. She is outstanding. Thank you again, Yomza, for the formatting and putting this together. And it's going to help you out. So if you're interested, grab it. Send me a note and we'll get that for you. So as I wrap up here today, culture matters. It matters even though you probably didn't realize it matters to you. It does. It matters more than you think. And it's not something to moan and complain about. You actually have the ability to create the experience that you want for you and your team and your whole company. That's what we talk about, transforming you, your team, and your company. The experience and the results. You can get outstanding results with an outstanding experience, not a painful one. It's possible. It's possible. It's up to you to create it. So you are the creator of your own experience. You're the creator of your own company's results. You're the creator of your own personal results. Pull all of that together and enjoy the results that you get. Enjoy your legacy. Enjoy your work and life balance. All of it. It's all up to you. Thanks again for being here, and we'll catch you again next time.